All right. It's 12 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon and welcome everyone to our second in a series of 10 webinars focused on affordable housing. My name is Teresa Murphy and I'm your official moderator for today's program. We're continuing our program from 2021 and the annual theme is opening more doors in 2022. Each webinar will be geared towards educating the realtor community about programs, solutions, and opportunities for your clients in this ever-changing financial environment. Throughout the year, we hope to provide information that will create more awareness and take away any stigmas associated with the idea of affordable housing. So we are finalizing the schedule, but all sessions will be held from 12 to 1:30, and you can register online at www.har.com/webinars for each of them. These will continue to be free for all of our members. So today's program will be presented by Freddie Mac, and it's centered around millennials deconstructing a generation. Before I introduce your speaker, I would like to remind you to put your questions into the chat throughout the afternoon. You can choose for the questions to go to everyone or just the panelists, but all questions will be addressed as time permits. And since I know you will ask, we are recording this session and all upcoming webinars, and we are available for you on our HAR TV channel. And you can access that by going to www.har.com/HARTV. Now let's get started. We have an exceptional subject matter expert leading you through our program today. We have Jana Davidovich, is a Director of Market Research and Insights with the Marketing and Communication team at Freddie Mac. In this position, Jana is responsible for market and consumer research, housing insights, and strategic analysis. Jana has over 14 years of experience in the residential mortgage and housing industry, spanning the origination, new construction, and secondary market sectors. Prior to joining Freddie Mac, she was a manager of market intelligence and analytics and an economics and strategic research manager at Pulte Group and Fannie Mae. Jana holds a BBA in finance and an MA in economics from University of Cincinnati and Cleveland State University. Thank you again for joining us today, and I will now pass it over to Jana.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I want to make sure you can hear me, and welcome everyone to this amazing data packed event. I'm gonna try to share my screen right now, but probably will go off the video a bit patchy, so bear with me. Let me know if you can see my screen, Teresa.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Let me get off this. Let's make sure, stop video. All right, thank you. All right, wonderful. As I said, hello everyone. I'm Jana Davidovich, Director of Market Research and Insights, and I'm very excited to be here. In my current role, I do focus quite a lot on housing market and economic trends, mortgage, home ownership, and consumer research. We are closely monitoring the latest housing market trends and factors impacting home ownership, as a part of a GSC. And one of those factors that many of you know has been shifting. It has been shifting demographics. Just recently, we have compiled a very comprehensive and, as a result, lengthy research that delves into the largest consumer generation cohort in the United States. This all-inclusive research covers an array of dimensions and characteristics of the Generation Y, otherwise known as millennials. So what I will be sharing with you today are some of the key findings of the insights we were able to capture through this particular research. Let's get started. In the past several years, between 4.3 and 4.4 million millennials turned 33 years old, a peak home buying age, and approximately another 4.6 million will reach this milestone each year in the next decade, making this generation the largest cohort going through or passing through the housing pipeline. So to attract and better serve this group of potential borrowers, we in the industry definitely need to better understand and expand our view on what this generation looks like and what their preferences are. So in this session, we'll examine who millennials are and how they differ from prior generations in terms of diversity, lifestyle shifts, education, and consumption patterns. We will also look at the impact millennials make on the housing market and how we can help solve some of the challenges this group of potential borrowers is facing. With that, let's get started. Who millennials are, right? Let's take a closer look at some of the detailed findings that we were able to capture in our research. So millennial population born between the 1981 and 1996 are arguably the most influential US generation the nation has seen since the baby boomers. In 2019, they have overtaken the baby boomers to become the largest population cohort at 71.2 million population count. We've calculated that nearly 22% of Americans fall into the millennial generation cohort. One interesting fact is that back about a year or so ago, in 2019, more than half of millennials were still in their 20s. And in fact, if you look carefully at the chart on the right, you can see that the group we called younger millennials, the first two bars on the right-hand side of that chart, they represent those who are between the ages of 23 and 30. So what does that mean? It means in the coming years, more millennials will be entering life stages that will drive a desire to own and purchase a home, which will in turn, among other things, will drive the homeownership rate higher. Millennials make up the most racially and ethnically diverse adult generation in US history. In 2019, 45% of Generation Y attributed themselves to minorities. Moreover, the share of Hispanic millennials at 21 is almost double the share of Hispanic baby boomers at 11%. Millennials also hold the highest share of the Asian population at 10%. So there's certainly a view that diversity is the most defining characteristic of this generation, and that in turn could impact further housing trends. So according to Pew Research analysis of census data, both Hispanic and Asian population are nearly twice as likely to live in multi-generational households. And I'll show you some of the information related to that later on that supports this particular statement. So if this trend holds, we will certainly expect an increase in overall share of multi-generational household nationwide, which could in turn drive shifts in the demand of housing and financing. Let's next take a look at a few life stage stats. As of 2020, millennial trailed Gen Xers and baby boomers in percentage of marriages and population with children. They were ages 24 to 39. At a marriage rate of about 46%, millennials are trailing behind both Gen Xers, 56%, and baby boomers, 62%. That's the chart on the left-hand side. Well, this difference across generations shows that these young adults are staying single longer, which has been sort of a long-term trend. We've seen one generation preceding that, Gen Xers, staying single longer than baby boomers, and then after them, millennials. And this sort of ties back to various socioeconomic factors, such as career pathways that they take, living arrangement, educational goals, and financial stability. Many of you know that two major life stage events that often lead to household formation and homeownership are marriage and having children. Well, our analysis do show that delaying marriage or remaining single past the prime marriage age bracket has depressed this generation homeownership rate. We know that married millennials make up the highest share of homeowners, 51%, absent of children, about 65% with children. While homeownership rates for singles stands about 28 to 29%, depending on the presence of children. Did you know that millennials are the most educated adult generation? 40% of them hold a bachelor degree or higher, compared with just 29% of Gen Xers and 28% of baby boomers when they were the same age. More than 10 percentage point jump in higher education for millennials can somewhat be explained by the timing of the Great Recession. If you recall, older millennials came of age when the recession began back in 2007. As unemployment surged back then, many millennials decided, as they struggled to find a job, they decided to either go to college or go back to college and continue their maybe advanced education. While 40% of millennials have at least a bachelor degree, the numbers do vary by region. Look at the map on the right-hand side. The breakout by state and metro area shows that a higher proportion of millennials with bachelor or advanced degrees tend to reside in the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic areas. This overall generational increase in post-secondary schooling is certainly one of the factors that is shaping generational consumption behavior and, of course, life choices. And I do wonder if it is also can be an indicator of what lays ahead when it comes to homeownership trends and choices. I'm going to move on to the student debt. The rise in student debt compared to other debt, such as credit card and car debt held by consumers, has been a hot topic, with much debate over proposals of debt forgiveness. The debt levels for young adult population is tied to rising tuition costs that we've seen, and of course, a greater percentage of them having attended college. As of 2020, roughly 1/3 of millennial population had student debt. The total dollar value of outstanding millennial student loan debt equated to nearly $501 billion, which is about 32% of all student debt in the US. This equates to an average about $34,000 for each borrower. To think of it in another way, the average student loan payment stands at about $393 per month, while the median student loan payment is about $222. A study by JP Morgan found that the typical family median student loan payment is about 5.5% of take-home income. I know I'm throwing quite a lot of numbers at you just to create comparison and better understand what the view is. I think it's important to look at it from all these different dimensions. I do think that this 5.5% take-home income is essentially a manageable amount for a person that completed their education. Also, we're able to confirm that people with advanced degrees do larger debt, but they also have a higher earnings trajectory, or many of them do, right? Often student debt is seen as a deterrent to homeownership for millennials. Well, student debt might delay homeownership, and actually several studies have determined that it does, unlikely to derail it as earning potential growing the person progresses in terms of age. You see, we've actually pulled together a quick slide for you on the right-hand side that does show you the age of the millennial going in the axis, and then created a breakout between the millennials that have a high school degree or less, associate degree in some college, and of course, bachelor degree and advanced degree. You do see that blue line that represents bachelor degree and advanced degree folks does have a much higher earning trajectory there. Cool. All right. As we talked about earning potential, let's next look at the income. Millennial median personal income surpasses those of prior generation, measured at the same age as of today millennials, of course, adjusted. Millennials' average personal income in 2019 reached $68,000, which is higher than that of both Gen Xers and baby boomers. We also have, those that are educated millennials have weathered quite well during the COVID, and we didn't see much of a dent there. One of the potential reasons for the high income levels are, as we just discussed, increased level of education than in the prior generation, higher female labor force participation rate, and of course, more equal wages among female and male. Moving on to millennial and labor force. So millennials make up about 6% of workforce, making them the largest generation in the US labor force. 59 million of them were working or looking for work in 2020. a large share of the millennial generation is still in the relatively early stages of their careers, as we've shown in the prior chart, which means that the impact on the workforce and the economy will be formidable in the future years. This is especially true because of their high educational credentials I've been talking about in the past several slides. Another highly discussed topic we wanted to cover is the gig economy. Since 2010, there has been a steady rise in the number of people participating in the economy or the non-salaried labor force. We define this particular segment as being made up of people who earn primary or supplemental income from freelance and other independent work arrangements such as Uber, DoorDash, and so on. McKinsey Global Institute estimates the total number participating in the gig economy back in 2019 was 68 million people. This is a notable increase from 2011 reports of only 16 million. Experts estimate that these numbers will continue to grow into the future. An MBO report estimates that millennials make up 38% of the gig economy workers compared to 29% of Gen Xers and third of baby boomers. We know that without a doubt, recent COVID-19 development had put a damper into the certain big gig economy sectors, such as independent drivers, as well as many other service-related segments. However, we've seen a significant pickup since then, since then. Why do we think it's important? Why do we want to talk? Why did I just spend 2 minutes talking about the gig economy? Simply because it is a challenge sometimes for loan officers, folks, to underwrite someone who has an arrival, who does not have W-2s per se. So that particular challenge is something that we as an industry definitely need to spend more time on and look at. And I will discuss this a bit later in this presentation. So far we talked about millennials as a homogeneous group. But as with any generation group, a span of 15 years of age means you will encounter differences in consumer needs and priorities, as well as people ages and opinions, as well as the life stages they're going through. Through our research, we found that further consumer segmentation is certainly necessary and helps to address the diverse needs of individual clusters of the millennial customers, and certainly improves audience targeting for real estate professionals and lending institutions. To see how this can be valuable and relevant, consider the fact that two individuals who are similar in age and income don't necessarily share similar needs, values, habits, and interests, as I mentioned before. Let's take a look at the example of a few personas that we at Freddie Mac were able to create for the first-time homebuyer segment. In one case, there's a young couple who is looking to start a family and expand. In another, there's a single female who is in favorable financial situation. She's secured and is looking to buy a home in order to start building equity. The motivation behind the desire to own a home in these two personas are certainly different. Hence, the messaging you would use to attract the attention of these two buyer personas is going to be vastly different. While in some ways these personas are linear to a life cycle of the average person, the content you would create in home buyer barriers you address for each and every one of those customers would be different. We do need to think about how do we make it more customized and more relevant. So building a successful strategy and gain market share focused on addressing customer needs is imperative. If any of you would like to learn a little bit more about the consumer personas, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions or provide more detail on the subject. Moving on to millennial and housing. And start with the homeownership discussion. Similar to other life stage stats that I've shared with you earlier, millennial homeownership is trailing behind older generations. It is tracking at about 48% as of 2020, which is below the rate of older generations when ages 24 to 39. It is also below the national average of 6%. And that is driven by multiple factors, some of which we've already covered and some we'll cover in more details later on. However, despite the challenges, the homeownership rate has been on the upward trajectory as this generation continued to mature and step, as I said, into the life stages that drive homeownership. It has been especially visible in this past year, past 2 years, to say the least. If you look at the chart on the right, we have seen a 5 percentage point increase in homeownership rate from 2019 to 2020. We haven't updated this information for 21, but that's just it shows you an indicator for just one year when COVID was present. This is the highest ramp up in homeownership rate this generation had seen thus far. As I said, that the main driver of this jump has been the COVID-19 pandemic, with factors such as record high savings rate, back then record low interest rates, fear of missing, and health safety concern, all driving more millennials towards homeownership. Well, there's no optimal homeownership rate. We do expect a further influx of home buyers in this generation as they get older, advance in their careers, and reach certain age milestone, pay off, of course, their student debt, right? In fact, household projections indicate that over the next decade, the fastest growing household type will be millennial families, with children ages 35 to 44. And according to U.S. data, that type of households married with children generate the highest homeownership rate among house types. About mid to high 70s homeownership rate, as you can see on the right-hand side chart, the orange reading. Combine this high homeownership rate with household growth projection you see on the left-hand side. What we anticipate to see is, of course, the higher demand and higher homeownership rate. One other important subject to bring up when thinking about the level of millennial homeownership is the historical variation in homeownership rate by race and ethnicity. Millennial generation, Hispanic, Latino, and African American ownership rates are substantially below those of non-Hispanic white rates, as you can see on the left-hand side chart. Taking this difference into consideration, and plus the high share of minorities, growing share of minorities that we displayed a couple of slides before, the result is low millennial homeownership rate. So that we definitely will see. This is something that we definitely need to spend more on and think through. Well, when it comes to millennials and home buyer perspective, here are a few interesting findings we're able to capture in our recent consumer survey. So we found that 76% of millennials believe that the benefits of purchasing a house largely outweighs the risks. We have increased millennial desire to purchase a home. It's not just for millennials, it's actually across most generations, but millennials definitely share the highest percentage of growth. Millennials are more enthusiastic about it. Interestingly, but not surprisingly, finding that 5% of millennials rely on their family, both financial and housing knowledge support. Slightly more than half of millennials savings plan in place to reach financial goals. What that means is another half does not, right? And one other finding that sort of prickled my ears is 25% of millennials are afraid of having a mortgage. A few factors may play into here. One is higher student debt, and another is an echo effect of last Great Recession, when millennials saw their parents lose their homes and the equity disappearing overnight. I want to dig a little bit further into understanding what your current home buyers look like. In fact, the study that I just discussed also will focus on a breakout of the consumer recently purchased homes in the past 3 years. Those consumers between the ages of 25 to 45, we try to carve out the middle generation, but not precisely, but still gives us a sort of a 20-year span. So here's what we're able to capture and what we found. The nearly 1 in 4 consumers who purchased a primary residence in the past 3 years live in multi-generational household. Interestingly, when you look at the results for the communities of color, Asian, Black Americans, African Americans, or Latinx consumers show that 1 in 3 households for the minority live in multi-generational household. More than half of recent buyers have a bachelor degree. You see that significantly higher ratio of Asian consumers, recent home buyers have a college degree. Let's look at a single female category. Share of Black single female homeowner households are above any other race or ethnicity. And yet another interesting and significant finding that I pointed out in the prior page is that who had purchased their homes in the past 3 years did rely heavily on parental financial support, 60% overall, and that slightly varies depending on the race and ethnicity. And that financial support come in the form of down payment, co-signing, closing costs, and so on and so forth. So that is very significant and extremely interesting when thinking about who your current consumers and customers are. Let's move on to barriers and challenges. Like most older Americans, millennials see homeownership as their primary financial. Top motivators being creation and stable place to live and create family memories. Path to homeownership today is covered with challenges. Delayed marriage, financial challenges of racial and ethnic minorities we just covered, less financial security, and higher all contribute to low homeownership rates for millennials. On top of that, rising home prices, record rising home prices, and record low inventory of affordable housing for sale have also impacted homeowners. We want to take a look at a few major barriers in more detail. One of which is down payment. According to Freddie Mac recent study, 68% of millennial consumers cite down payment as the biggest barrier to homeownership. Back in 2019, a survey by Partners that nearly half of millennial renters who say they want to buy a home actually have no savings for payment. And though we might have seen some improvement during 2020 when saving rates went up, many prospective buyers still find saving for down payment to be the biggest challenge they have to overcome. Numerous millennials have a skewed notion of the minimum down payment requirements to buy a home. One of Freddie Mac's studies revealed 2% of millennials believe that 20% down payment on a home was required, or they were really not sure how much is needed. In reality, the median down payment back in 2019 was 12% for all home buyers and 6% first-time home buyers. The data didn't really change much according to NAR for 2020, so the results are similar. And according to the census, 47%, nearly half of millennial first-time home buyers put 0 and 5% on a home, while another 15% put down between 6 to 10%. And this is where we, housing market professionals, can educate consumers on options and products that are available through various organizations, including across the industry. I do want to point out one more thing here is that one of our surveys also indicated that there's a very low knowledge across millennials and young adults on what options they have available when it comes to down payment assistance or the affordable products. I think only third were aware of down assistance programs or any affordable products that are available on the market to them. Yet another important consideration when mining homeownership is financial literacy. Despite the fact that high share of millennials have and graduate degree cohorts, they're less financial literate. There was a study that was done at TIA Institute back in 2018. What they found is that only 16% of millennials could be considered financially literate, compared to 34% of adult assessed at the same age range in 2009. And moreover, only 9% of millennials that assess their own financial knowledge as high or very high as financial literate. The same report also found that fintech usage, such as mobile apps, that are very common, right? When coupled with financial illiteracy, creates a greater tendency for poor money management, suggesting that the usage of fintech tools is not a substitute for financial education, but a complement. So it could help us, but it's not necessarily something that will drive the knowledge upward. Millennials today have more choice, more tools, more data, and more serious consequences from the financial decisions that we make. But we look for ways to expand homeownership opportunities to a large share of young consumers, improvement in homebuyer education compared to Freddie Mac, or just recently released homeownership education module that is supposed to help first-time homebuyers or potential future borrowers. All right. Let's move on to actual home buying activity. As we previously mentioned, the housing market has been growing and will continue to grow into the next decade. The age demographic continue to transition into life stages and therefore impacting the homeownership and home buying activity. In fact, millennials, what I'm sharing with you here on this slide is our own FedMac activity. So what we were is that in 2020, in 2021, millennials for more than half of all the purchase mortgages, 52% to be precise, bought by Freddie Mac. And based on our analysis, our counterparts had seen similar trends. Let's take a look at the first-time homebuyer activity. Freddie Mac's 2020 acquisition data shows that millennial comprised an increasingly large share of all first-time home buyers, 67%. The housing industry is certainly feeling the impact of millennials stepping into the space, which is why it is imperative to understand the characteristics of this consumer segment. Our evaluation of first-time home buyer profile, who these consumers are, found that they are actually much better off in terms of financial stability than where they were a decade ago. We also found that the number of millennial first-time homebuyer has increased even more as a result of COVID-19, because many renters who've been postponing home purchase seeking the security and stability of homeownership. The 2020 ramp up in young cohort was more noticeable than in the increase in the older millennial group. What I'm trying to say is that across all the millennials, that younger cohort that I showed you on the first slides is who was most active. One factor that I wanted to include and talk about, millennials and baby boomers are competing for similar value homes. We found that back in 2010, actually, that trend sort of continued. We've seen that both millennials and baby boomers were seeing the same value properties. And that could be, the many factors could impact that. The fact that there are not enough entry-level homes, that millennials wait longer to purchase a home, and of course, baby boomers are looking for smaller properties. A few more points around housing mortgage activity. Despite millennials are more likely to live in urban center, older generation, a high share of them tend to purchase homes in more affordable regions. That is actually more of a trend as lately with the higher levels, so higher rates of migration. So this recent shift of work from home trends certainly impacted where young adults are purchasing homes. They are shopping in more affordable cities from California, New York, Illinois, into more affordable southern states. I think And that's sort of reflected in price appreciations that we're seeing across the regions. Some of these interstate have a home price appreciation as buyers from more expensive regions coming in and snatching the property. I think last point I want to make on the slide is the regions millennials are most active. We found that most active millennial home buyer markets back in 2020 were in Houston, Chicago, Atlanta, Phoenix, and Washington, D.C. It has sort of shifted a bit. I think there's more activity now. We're seeing, but just in terms of sheer volume of consumers, these are some of the major MSAs or major metros that we are seeing high activity. Texas was by far the leader, with 5 metro areas making to top 20 metro list. Seeing a lot of employers sort of shifting from California into Texas and bringing in the consumers or buyers with them. This brings us to our next section of this presentation, homeownership challenges and communities. Despite diverse, tech-savvy, better educated, higher earning generation, it is struggling to reach American dreams more than any prior generation before them. There are formidable issues depressing millennial homeownership rates, and in this section we've highlighted a few, along with the potential solutions and recommendations. Let's start with demographics. Now, I spoke several times on this topic through this presentation, but I do want to make a act on it. As we mentioned previously, along with the higher population numbers, this generation brings a higher than degree of racial and ethnic diversity to the U.S. population. The high share of minorities within this demographic is likely to lead to reduced homeownership rate for overall homeownership rate. As an industry, help to reduce homeownership gap. So let's start with what Freddie is doing, and that is broadening educational resources, both content and language availability, establishing new programs to address financial capabilities and mortgage solutions for community scholars. We also develop plans to further expand partnership with organizations that lead the way to bring greater equality in housing and equity as well. So on this page, I highlighted a few options for the industry to consider, such as increased outreach programs, providing more targeted and effective financial education programs, as well as increased awareness and better customized down payment assistance program. But another challenge we discussed earlier is low literacy, which is more common with millennials, even though more online resources are available. This raises the question of why educational offerings haven't improved millennial financial literacy. Creating partnerships across the housing industry ecosystem, strengthening this young is imperative. So what is Freddie Mac doing? We're offering educational resources such as they did Freddie Mac Credit Smart in multiple languages to educate homeowners and help housing professionals guide consumers. Do take a look at this. We will share with you the stack, and you can see that we've a couple of links. There's some great resources you'll be able to find through these links. Freddie Mac is also partnering across the housing ecosystem to help connect borrowers with valuable resources like our borrower help centers and housing counselors. As in the prior slide, we've also highlighted a few potential industry options to explore, such as creation of effective financial education apps aimed at tech-savvy millennials. In one of the prior slides, we show that nearly 50% are inclined to save if they have some kind of automatic app that they can leverage. Increasing reach of housing professionals through class offerings in high school, colleges, and places of, I think, imperative. Lenders and real estate agents should continue connecting borrowers with housing counselors who can provide guidance and serve as trust advisors. Gig economy will only get bigger. We discussed previously, millennials embrace the gig economy, and as a result, in the future, we'll see shifting dynamic of the labor market. In response to the shift, industry and policy changes are necessary to streamline access to credit mortgage origination process for non-payroll workers. What we're currently doing at Freddie Mac, we're offering lender solution for self-employed applicants that save on underwritings, such as advisor, asset and income modeler, or AIM for short. Additional industry option to explore include extended view of acceptable income streams, as well as creation of new innovative mortgage products. And yet another challenge that we brought up previously is the down payment savings. Back in 2020, nearly half of millennial renters who say they buy a home had no savings set aside, as I've mentioned. While alternative options exist, the fact remains share of millennials with savings accounts is alarmingly low. Even the current economic downturn, the housing industry needs to find ways to encourage savings and make sure millennials understand all the down payment options available to them. Freddie Mac is offering low down payment programs, such as Freddie Mac Mortgage and the Freddie Mac One, and also promoting down payment assistance program to real estate professionals and other partners. Beyond that, potential industry options could include development of digital wallet tools, as well as down payment savings account with special interest rate and matching deposits to a certain. Also, lenders need to better educate potential borrowers about ways to source down payment assistance aside from savings and increase awareness of better down payment assistance programs. And last but not least, affordable housing shortages. I touched on it a bit back in the prior section. The shortages of affordable housing has hurt millennials more than any other segment of the home buyers. Freddie Mac estimates that there are more than 100,000 missing households headed by 25 to 34-year-olds because of that shortage. A limited supply of and shortage skilled labor, of course, increased inflation and the interest rates and prices, all sort of driving that. We do. At Freddie, we offer loan options that promote renovation and energy efficient improvement like Green Choice and Choice Home mortgages and Choice Renovation Financing. Freddie Mac offers manufactured housing choices as well. Potential industry options to explore would be accelerated housing construction and offering more options to meet the demand. To make some of this happen, local government certainly, I know many are looking at, should consider relaxing excessive regulation and restrictive zoning policies. Let's not forget innovation of housing solutions to create a preserve affordable housing, vacant property converted, educating developers on affordable housing options, shared equity model, new housing choices. That concludes my presentation. I think we'd be ready to take some questions.
Thank you, Yana. We did have a question at the beginning. Can you clarify what the years are from the millennial generation?
Yes, it's 89. Give me a second. I have that in one of my slides, I think. Oops, sorry. I think I usually include it in appendix, but give me 1 sec. Bears. 81 to 6. My apologies. I wasn't sure. It's 82 or 81.
What was it? I'm sorry.
81 to 96.
Okay, great. And then on slide 5, I think there was a 2+ category used on one of the charts. If you can clarify what that was.
Which of the slides? Sorry.
I think it was slide 5. I made note of when the question was asked.
Oh, the 2+.
2+.
Okay, yes, that means that there's it includes more than one minority.
Okay.
Could be a combination of Asian, Black, or African American, and so forth.
Okay. It says for a new realtor, how to talk to millennials, do's and don'ts. Any suggestions on that?
Yes, I think this is where I think I covered in some lengths of the consumer persona aspect of it, right? I think understanding what the needs and the wants are. We do see, as I said, that rely heavily on financial support from their parents, but they also rely on educational support on their parents. So yet another study indicated that majority of millennials tend to, for financial education, they tend to rely on their parents. So it's involving that, taking that into consideration, taking the fact that the numbers speak volume when it comes to how many of them are not aware of how much is. So provide that guidance and education, and being more personable, and holding hands when they're first time home buyers, I think extremely important. Don't assume that they know everything, right? They don't, and you're just stepping into.
Okay, great. And then there was one question, and what is a gig economy?
Yes, so we talked a little bit about this. So the gig economy, my connection saying that it's so we define the economy as the non-salaried labor force. So this is the where you can earn primary or supplemental income from freelance or work arrangements. So think of this as an Uber driver, or think of it as the art designer who got a contract and then it expires and that's it. So Upworks and others. And we're seeing a younger generation embracing this particular sector. Everything I read says that the numbers are growing, especially post-pandemic. I don't know if we can go. We do see a significant increase in the past year or so.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. I think that is all of the questions that we have today. Thanks again for coming and presenting to our group. I really hope that each of you attending take this for yourself, but for your clients, and then just appreciate the time that you're taking to become more educated. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the second in the series of monthly webinars. And so we're going to be back next month with another important topic. Next month's topic is solutions for buyers overcoming the aging housing stock. So please check har.com/webinars in the next few days for more information and how to register for that. That's all for today. I hope to see you all next month, and everyone have a great rest of the week. Thank you. Bye-bye.